All right, so quick little recap of things that we were going over yesterday. Remember that you do have two kind of elements to the prompt that you're going to take a look at. You're going to judge whether or not you find the behavior to be reasonable or not. I don't care, again, as to whether or not you find that behavior to be reasonable. The conjunction list that you have could really come in handy if you find his behavior not to be reasonable, because you could be writing about, no, I don't like the fact, or I don't agree with the fact that Holden does this, but now I have to explain why it's important. That's when something like nevertheless, however, even still could end up, maybe being a way to kind of link some ideas. We didn't mention this yesterday, and no one really seemed to worry about it, but just to clarify, you don't have to worry about these opening line segment from Emily Dickinson. It's just there, kind of like the same way the Lindbergh quote was for you on your DRQ that you did last week. It's there so you can kind of start to generate some ideas, but it's not going to be, Emily, why don't you make reference to Emily Dickinson in your attention grabber? You certainly don't need to. If there's something about it that you like, you're a big Emily Dickinson poetry fan and you want to include it, certainly go for it. But there's not that expectation that you have to have it. I think there's an Emily Dickinson movie coming, so you can go see Madame Butterfly, Emily Dickinson's movie, whatever else you want to see. It'd be a good weekend. So I know we started getting into structures and all that kind of stuff. Anything about the wording of the prompt cause any problems after you left the classroom, or even maybe while you were in here yesterday?
So I know that we talked about if we agree with his reasoning or not, and then we explain his significance. But how does that work with madness?
So the word madness. Someone was asking, do I need to define madness, for the prompt, like spend a paragraph with that? And I would say no. I would say that if depending upon his behaviors, you might view some as being, this is madness, this is insanity, something like that. You could also certainly go that his behavior is maddening, and I would be okay with that. So if as a parent your child is flunking out of school after school after school, that doesn't mean that insanity has overtaken the brain or anything, but that behavior could be maddening, that you're not doing anything to improve it, and that's fine. So it would be behavior that you find to be irrational, maybe. I don't know if maybe unexplainable would be quite the right way to go with it, but behavior that just doesn't seem appropriate for that age. So the fact that a person smokes a cigarette doesn't mean insanity is creeping into Ethan's mind. And I don't want you to take the hall pass and go use a Juul in between, periods to get in Holden's mind right before writing the TWA. But behavior that just doesn't seem appropriate for that person, for that age, for everything that's going on would be like that kind of madness. Now, if you do think that, again, not like insanity, but you do think there is some mental illness or problems taking place because of grief, not being able to deal with it, stress, anxiety is just going over the top for him, that would certainly work as his madness or maddening. But you don't have to do like a clinical diagnosis for him.
Where did you put that, do you think, in order of
I think the nicest thing would probably be within that introduction. Okay. That his eccentric behavior, he's falling into, risky behavior. He's doing things that could be problematic for him down the road, and if he doesn't get some kind of help with it, it could have some negative effects, in the years that are going to follow. Consequently, this behavior that he's partaking in is not reasonable. However, it does help Salinger advance his argument that, you kind of fill in the blank. I think if you're able to do that in those first few sentences within the introduction, you've established what you mean with the different types of behavior that you're going to look at. And then once you're going into those body paragraphs, you would only make reference to it as you seem appropriate. But I think that definition would more or less just kind of happen within the opening, within the intro would be the nicest place. Looking at it being reasonable or unreasonable, if you feel that there is some behavior that a person typically wouldn't consider to be maddening, a paragraph to emphasize why you are viewing it that way. But I think that's the only time that you'd really have to bring it up.
Could I write a paragraph about just like his date with Sally in particular? Because I think he has a lot of maddening things in that experience. Like when he like talks about how he wants to run away and he's like almost crying, begging her to come with him, and then he's like, then he insults her.
What? Yeah, you certainly could. I think. And again, I always want to be careful, and I know I'll say this over and over again. There's not like one right way to approach it, that you have to do like all these check boxes for it to work, because, writing is kind of like, drawing and art and things like that. It's a skill. There's multiple ways that you can go about doing it. If I were doing this kind of setup here, I would... where we have like avoids confrontation and self-destructive behavior, I wouldn't want to kind of put like Sally's date, or date with Sally. I'd want to have some kind of abstract term or whatnot that I would use that would kind of encompass that. Not that you're going to go difficulty of playing with others, but his inability to communicate is maddening. And you could certainly have Sally's date then as being the focal point of it. That the fact that when it comes to the date, yelling and screaming, by the time you're getting to the end, at least according to her it is, the fact that he probably can't express himself very well as to what his feelings are, going from she's a pain in the butt to, hey, let's go to Vermont and get married, life will be great, I can work at a gas station, it'll be okay, kind of stuff. So I think you want to have some kind of term, concept, phrase that would encompass what's going on within the date. But if you have a paragraph where you have multiple details that are coming from that date, you're not in automatic danger of me going, well, come on, you need some more evidence, from throughout. If both paragraphs end up being about Sally's date, that could be a little bit of an issue, because now at that point, your scope or your range of evidence is a little limited. But if you have, something with Sally's date for over here, you have something with like the Mr. Antolini incident, going on toward the latter part of the book in your second body paragraph, I'm okay with your range of support at that point. So just what would be a term to kind of describe what that date's going to be, or not that date, but what that problem, that behavior that you find to be reasonable or unreasonable is going to be. It's a pretty good example of like just his not that he is schizophrenic or necessarily bipolar, but he has waves of emotions, that'll take place where everything's great, everything's bad, everything's great, everything's bad. Sally's date's a pretty good microcosm of that. Just general kind of like instability, could be something that you might be able to look at with Sally's date, where there's ebbs and flows the whole way along. Someone was asking, could I have, like, say, both body paragraphs dealing with, like, an avoids confrontation? So I have, like, multiple examples of avoids confrontation here. Later on, I have another body paragraph. I'm still looking at avoids confrontation, another set of examples there. So I still have the same number of specific details as if I were doing two types of behavior, but I'm focusing it all on one big general kind of idea. I'm okay with that, because you got the support the whole way through with it. So you could go, his maddening behavior of, being an emotional roller coaster, and focus on that. So again, Sally's date being one paragraph, and then something else where that keeps coming up being another paragraph, you would be all right with that. We talked about the significance a little bit yesterday. As to how that can go in, whether you want it to be in one paragraph, whether you want it to be one paragraph all by itself, or drop it into, the earlier paragraphs, and again, makes no difference. One thing that maybe you might want to consider as to where you're going to place it, if you are going to have the significance, well, really, regardless of where you put it, with the significance, but let's say I have the significance in this paragraph, and I have the significance in this paragraph as well. you do want some kind of natural connection between the behavior and the significance. You know, so if your paragraph's all about self-destructive behavior, and this is the way that he's smoking, and this is the way he's drinking, and he's, you know, calling prostitutes and all of that kind of stuff is taking place. Salinger writes this book to let you know about the horrors of World War II. That could be a tough connection. Okay, so what does the smoking, the drinking, and the prostitutes have to do with the horrors of World War II? You want to make sure that there's some kind of link or connection, natural progression that's going to take you from what those details are to what that overall significance would be. So you probably want to kind of think of working backwards in a way as to what's my overall significance that Salinger's trying to get across to the reader. Now, which examples best exemplify that? As opposed to going, I didn't like it when Holden did that. I didn't like it when Holden did that. I really didn't like it when Holden did that. That's the stuff I need to write about. But if those things don't work together in some kind of harmony to get the point across, that significance could end up kind of being a little choppy. So that commentary naturally starts to develop and generate itself so long as those behaviors link to whatever you find that significance to be. You know, if you think Salinger's kind of doing a little bit of like an expose piece almost on how, you know, parents have to actively partake in their children's lives, then I probably want some examples that are going to deal with Holden and, you know, lack of support or feeling kind of, excuse me, alone, isolated, because that would link up then with what that overall significance would be. Or do we have a whole bunch of purposes? We have that soapstone, you know, so that's kind of something that you would want to look at to go, not that you're limited to whichever ones we mentioned, you know, on that last week, but that would certainly be a place to kind of start to pick and choose. All right, I think this is good, I can support this. Now I just want to find the evidence that best matches up with it. So you kind of already have an outline of potential things with it. And don't forget about with that soapstone, you know, the audience. This is why it's necessary for him to communicate this idea to those parents, to the teenage readers, to the, you know, maybe children, you know, maybe not even teenagers yet, but that middle school group that's not mature enough to do homework, even if it's not being counted for points. Virginia must not have done it much. No. Yeah, like there's, you know, when it comes to, okay, what am I going to sacrifice? Conclusion's always going to be the first one that's going to go. And when that happens, you know, say you're working on that, maybe it's a third body paragraph, those closing sentences of that third body paragraph can still be like that overall summation kind of thing. I have a hard time believing that, like, say on like an AP exam kind of setting, that a person gets their point for their thesis, they have all their evidence and commentary, they get a 4 out of 4, they're recognizing the nuances of the argument, they get that sophistication, oh, we got to take that point away because there's not a conclusion. If it comes to an abrupt, you know, like mid-sentence and it's just over, maybe there could be a little bit of an issue at that point, but no, I that wouldn't be detrimental. Now, assuming you have the time to do it, you know, it's putting the bow on the birthday present, it's a nice finishing touch, you may as well go about it and do that part. But that would, I wouldn't stop a body paragraph with 4 minutes to go in order to write a conclusion. A comment that I don't recall putting on any TWAs last week, which is very good, was going, your introduction's a little long. I would cut some of this out. Because sometimes people will have a lengthy intro. So if Virginia does spend like 8 sentences defining madness before she gets to her body paragraphs, and then her body paragraphs end up getting shorter and shorter as time goes along because she's running out of time, that's when hindsight is I probably should have skimmed on that intro a little bit. But there didn't seem to be any issues where those intros were getting really lengthy and then mini body paragraphs happening. I think that's more likely to happen if you get a prompt for the first time and you're writing it and you're in that I don't know what to write. Because the worst thing to do is to not write. The second worst thing to do is to write junk, you know, in an intro. But yeah, no conclusion isn't going to be a reason to cry at the end. You might want to put on your red hunting hat and tie the ear flaps down. I don't think you need to cry then.
So 2 like paragraphs explaining the reasons, 1 explaining the significance. We don't need 3 reasons, 3 paragraphs of reason. 1 is significance.
There's a lot of stuff going on right there. So I don't. You said I don't need 3 paragraphs of like examples.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't. I don't. No, I don't think you need to. Now, again, like if you do this, okay, you got 2 paragraphs of reasoning, you're explaining evidence and commentary, and then you're doing your significance at the end, okay, in that third body paragraph. I can't say for guarantee, well, is it because you did all those things, you're getting that point, you're getting that point, and then you're getting the sophistication point down the end. We can't ever kind of do those pinky swear, if you do this, this will happen. I would say, assuming you do those things, there's a really good chance of getting this, and there's a really good chance of at least getting there. So you're taking a look at a 4 out of 6. If you are doing the model of, I'm going to put significance in with the behavior, all right? Anyone feel like they're going that way with it? All right, so Marie's going to do that. So she does her intro, she does her first body paragraph, talks about the behavior, does her details, and has significance. And then she does it a second time. And she looks up at the clock, period ends at, 18 for us? And it's like 8:04. If she has more ideas, she may as well keep going with it, because in some ways she's competing not really against just the rubric, but she's competing against everyone else. And if Marie gets more content down, assuming it's good content, that's certainly going to elevate her score. But if you have good examples in these 2 paragraphs, you're making strong arguments, generating really detailed, nuanced commentary within those 2 body paragraphs, that can be enough to absolutely get the 6. I don't want people, though, to kind of get in the habit of, I did what I wanted to, and I'm done in 25 minutes. Yay for me. If I got more time and I have more ideas, I think it'd be silly not to kind of keep going with it. But you doing what we have up there can absolutely be enough for that 4, for that 5, for that 6 out of 6. I would not go, say you're not doing it this way, where you're going to do, you think you're going to do your significance in 1 paragraph?
Yeah.
Okay. I wouldn't try to write 4 body paragraphs. I just feel like that's probably going to be spreading yourself too thin.
Yeah.
So that would be my suggestion for it. Now again, if you have like 25 minutes after those 2 body paragraphs, maybe you're going, yeah, I think I could do this, but I just don't see that working too well too often for a lot of people.
So the sophistication point, for the last essay we were talking about connecting it to like current day, things that are going on right now. Do we still do that with this one?
I wouldn't worry about the current day, because and that's why I added this part down here, that recognizing the impact of Salinger's purpose and argument in relation to that audience and time period, because for this one it's not simply a DRQ, it's kind of a hybrid DRQ rhetorical analysis in a way. Even though you're not mentioning diction and symbolism and imagery, you're still taking a look at arguments and purpose of what Salinger's trying to do. So as opposed to, this is how people do maddening behavior today, similar to what Holden was doing, and why I don't find it to be reasonable, we're going to go back to Salinger. So if you have that emphasis placed on Salinger's overall purpose and why he's trying to get this argument across to that specific audience, that's going to be getting you into strong consideration for that sophistication. Now again, if someone were to, you come up with all these examples and you go, Salinger writes this because he's trying to warn parents that their children are in a whole lot of trouble, and you leave it at that, that's not going to be getting those nuances, the complexity of the argument. You still have to do that part, but you putting your time and energy into his purpose, his argument, I would much rather you do that than explain why, Kirsten has maddening behavior, and you recognize it when you sit next to her in class. So now, traditionally with that DRQ, yeah, it is going to be relevance of the argument, as to how it would still go on. But this one, we're taking a look at a book from the past. So that connection to what's still going on today isn't going to really resonate with the reader nearly as much, as it would be expected. Mo, you ready to write it right now? Why not? Of what? I think you need to find more than examples. Now she's giving me the dirty eyeball. Well, what do you want to find examples of?
Well, I know what I'm gonna do for like the first paragraph.
Okay, so what would be more things besides like avoiding problems that he partakes in that could kind of be that maddening behavior? All right, so let's make a quick little, general list. Not going into take a look at this chapter, but avoids problems or confrontation. Could be a behavior of his that drives people crazy. We already mentioned self-destructive, so I'll put that one down. Sarah, do you have a question or do you have another one? Okay. I'll just put self-destructive. Okay. Maybe he's so compulsive at lying that he lies about lying and he's telling us the truth. Ooh. Did you notice how quick she was with that comeback? That was good. Shay, did you have one? Did you? That's disappointing.
I said extreme cynicism. That's a word.
Yeah. And that can kind of cross over into pessimism and all that kind of stuff as well. I like that better than saying he's depressed, because there is a little more complexity in that where you're kind of expecting the worst out of people and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's one that you could go with. Alex?
So he doesn't really feel those emotions.
Do you think it's he can't handle it or he doesn't understand them?
I think it's a mix of both.
Okay, so almost kind of like having an emotional identity in some kind of ways. Emotional identity, confusion. I was talking to Katie Emmons today. Some of you know Katie Emmons. Johnny builds homes with Katie Emmons. I mean, you guys are going to be a contracting firm here in a couple of years. I told her, senior, said, I think you're stressed about not being stressed. And she kind of had I think you might be right, kind of thing. Where, not saying she's having confusion about her emotional identity, but if I'm not feeling something must be wrong. But because I'm not taking this class and this class, I don't feel that stress that motivated me through my junior year. Something's wrong with me, kind of thing. So certainly that emotional identity, the confusion about how you're supposed to feel, maybe not knowing what's expected of you, and that can kind of come with that cynicism, that whole kind of phony idea as well with it. Keep in mind, with me just saying phony, and this might be something that would happen more with Izza's with the cynicism. If Izza were to put, a specific example of his cynical behaviors when he refers to people as being phony, that's not going to count as detail, because, it just happens so prevalently. Now, if you have specific times where he's using it, you're absolutely fine. But I wouldn't want someone going, the fact that he uses the term phony, quotation mark, look, I used a quote, that's not going to, count as that specific nature of the detail. What else?
His fickle nature, how he changes that.
Fickle nature? Yeah. To use a word from the multiple choice thing that you did, he's flippant a lot of the time, where he'll just kind of go in a whole bunch of different, directions at one time. So the thing here, and we don't have to come up with an exhaustive list, but fairly quickly we got like 6 options, and there's clearly more that would be out there. That it's not that you have to feel like I have to write about just these 2. Or, is it mentioning, can I do 3? Sure, you can, and there are certainly some things here. It might not be a bad idea for you to have, maybe a list of 3 or 4 and go, okay, I want to take a look at this one, I want to take a look at this one, and if I have time, I'm going to bring this one in. Kind of having that pecking order of this is what I want to do, time allows it, I can do here. But whichever ones you ultimately go with, say you have these 2 and these 2, what is going to be that overall significance from the Salinger perspective that makes that behavior relevant? That's probably going to be the big thing that you have to decide today. So, and not to pick on Morgan, and I don't know where Morgan's at with this yet, if she's still trying to come up with examples or details, she would want to have this thing squared away so that those examples, details, concepts fit in with what that overall, significance thing is going to be.
So the significance kind of like the author's proof.
What's up with you and Hannah? Flannel Friday, not Thursday.
We're in allowance, yeah.
Sorry. I was being flippant.
Well, then, oh my goodness. I don't know what I was gonna say. I forgot.
You said the author's purpose.
Oh yeah. Is this Mo?
Yeah.
No, is this? Yeah, the author's purpose. Is that what the significance is, basically? Like
Yeah.
why we chose to write it.
Yeah, so that significance of the work as a whole, how does this better contribute to what Salinger's trying to get across? And again, if you're able to bring in that audience, that target audience with that purpose, I think that helps with the complexity, the nuance, that sophistication idea, taking place. You got this!
I'm gonna get a 6 on these, so that's not bad. I'm gonna be actually angry.
Alright. Anger's a good thing.
I'm gonna be so
Depending on
pissed.
when.
First, now I have to give her like a 4 just so
Yeah, no.
No, I don't give. You earn.
You should. You also don't make mistakes. You should let her earn a 5+.